Turo and car sharing can be a lucrative business model to take part in, if done correctly. But like everything, as car sharing and Turo has gained popularity over the years, it has of course gained the attention of people that quite honestly don't really know what they're doing. As a result, if you're somebody who is brand new to the car sharing and Turo space, there are some major red flags that you should look to avoid if you're wanting to be successful at this side hustle. And so in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the 3 biggest red flags that you should absolutely avoid if you're somebody who's wanting to start and scale a car sharing fleet successfully. So let's get started. So as you guys may know if you've seen some of my recent videos, I've been working on redoing my YouTube studio for the last few weeks, and it has been quite the undertaking. In fact, it has been much harder and much more time consuming than I initially anticipated that it would be. Now the setup that we have here is going to be my setup moving forward, but we are still working on improving a few different aspects of the new studio to just improve the quality of my videos. For example, the lighting, we need to improve the lighting a bit, and that's going to be a trial and error process that will probably take a few weeks, and we're actually getting the help from somebody who is much more experienced in this realm than I am. These shelves behind me that are very much bare right now are not going to be bare forever, and they are going to be filled in the next couple of days. And I also have a brand new camera that I purchased a couple of weeks ago. It's currently sitting in the closet over there because despite the fact that I am a YouTuber who's been making videos for over 3 years, I actually find cameras to be extremely intimidating, and I have been procrastinating on actually learning how to use my new camera, but that will be coming very soon, and hopefully all of these different factors will really help increase the production quality of my videos. So it will be a bit of a learning curve as we work through some of these new issues and get everything ironed out, but my hope is to have everything completely set up and complete within about 1 to 2 weeks. So in the meantime, I appreciate your patience. But now let's talk about what I actually want to address in this video, which is red flags that new or even seasoned Turo hosts should be avoiding. Now, I have made videos similar to this topic in the past, covering various mistakes and errors that every Turo host should avoid. And because of that, in this video, I don't want to cover some of the more cookie cutter items that we've talked about dozens of times. So things like over-leveraging yourself with debt, overpaying for cars, not following the terms of service, these are all things that you should absolutely avoid doing, but because I've addressed these items in so many other videos, I'm not going to discuss them today. So with that, the first red flag that I do want to talk about is Turo management companies. As Turo has gotten more and more popular, there's different segments of this business that people have begun and started within the car sharing niche. You have the cash car business model that I use, luxury cars, other people's cars, fleet management services. There are a wide variety of different ways that you can get started with car sharing, and some are better than others. One of these business models that has gained a lot of popularity is the idea of fleet management, which is basically whenever somebody or a group of people will manage other people's cars in exchange for a portion of the revenue. So this would be, for example, if I was to go to you and say, hey, do you want to make 100% passive income? If you buy a car, send the car to me, I'll manage it, and you'll get 60% of the profit each and every month by doing nothing at all. This sounds really attractive because it is a form of relatively passive income, and it's something that has gained a lot of popularity over the years throughout the entire country. But these types of business models can be risky, especially if you're somebody that has no interest in doing Turo yourself and you simply want to buy a car and ship it to somebody else for them to manage for you. In fact, recently I saw this TikTok.
See all these Turo vehicles behind me? Their owners live in different states all over the nation, and the management company sent out an email this morning that they are bankrupt and come get your vehicle. So there's my Raptor behind me. Here's an awesome Yukon AT4. This management company had set up 5 other locations, mostly in the West, but one in Charlotte, one in Phoenix, Vegas, other places, and had people ship them vehicles, Teslas and other vehicles, to start renting out from them. And now those people have to take on the expense of getting their vehicles back. I would recommend not shipping your vehicle across the country to have it rented out on Turo.
And what this guy is saying is basically he had a car that he had given to a fleet management company. They had multiple locations throughout the United States, and one morning all of their hosts got an email saying, hey, we're filing for bankruptcy, we're shutting down, you have to come and get your car. So now there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different hosts that have purchased cars specifically for this fleet management company to manage, and this company has just announced on a whim that they're going to be closing down their doors. And now these people who have purchased these cars have these cars that are depreciating, that are costing them money each and every month, and now they don't really know what to to do with them. I have looked at so many different fleet management companies over the years, purely out of curiosity and out of research of wanting to know all the different facets of running a car sharing business. And over the years, as I've learned about these different companies, I've also learned that there are very, very few of these companies that actually know what they're doing. In fact, of all of the different fleet management companies that I've looked into over the years, there's only one that I feel confidently recommending to other people, and that's West Coast Dave. I'll include a link to his profile down in the description below, but he is one of the few on social media that actually knows what he's doing. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any good fleet management companies out there, because that certainly isn't the case either. But whenever it comes to the companies that offer these types of services, there are way more bad ones than there are good ones. The thing about Turo is that getting cars is one of the hardest portions of the business model because it requires a lot of money. And so you have somebody that wants to start a car sharing business and they don't have the funds to do it themselves, so they come up with the idea that they're going to simply manage other people's cars. And while this can be a really great and relatively easy business model in small numbers, the problem comes into play whenever these fleet management companies scale far too quickly. And I think that this is the case with that fleet management company that was mentioned in this TikTok. This company had 5 locations. They obviously scaled incredibly quickly. They had a ton of cars and overhead just simply got out of hand. And I know that with my own experience managing my own Turo cars, running 1, 2, 3 cars is vastly different than running 10, and running 10 is different than running 20. I know that as my fleet has grown, I've experienced growing pains, and there's been some major mistakes that I have made along the way that have cost me a lot of money. And because of the fact that I own my cars outright and my business model has a pretty high profit margin, I've been able to continue to grow despite these mistakes. But if you have 50 or 60 cars that you have a very small profit margin on, well, those mistakes are much harder to recover from. And I suspect that this is probably what happened to this closed down fleet management company, and it'll probably happen more in the future as well. Now again, I do want to reiterate that this does not mean that all fleet management services are bad, because there are good ones, but it does mean that if you are somebody who's wanting to send a car to a fleet manager in order to make passive income, then you should make sure to vet that fleet management company as much as possible, look at their reviews, look at their profile, make sure that they've been operating a Turo fleet for years and that they have at least 1,000 trips on the platform. If they do not meet those pieces of criteria, you should absolutely pass, or at least be aware that you're taking on some unnecessary risk. The second red flag is leasing, and I'm not only talking about leasing a car for Turo, but listening to anybody that tells you that you should do this. Because in my eyes, leasing a car is no different than renting a car to then rent that car out on Turo. There is simply a lot of risk, and there isn't enough gain to make it worth your while. In fact, every few days I see a post on the internet asking if leasing is a good idea in order to grow and scale your Turo fleet, and in my opinion, the answer is always no. With leasing, you have so many different aspects of the equation to take into account, from the actual cost to lease, mileage limitations, contractual obligations, and once you dig into the nitty-gritty of it all, it just isn't worth it. One of the biggest benefits of Turo is building equity into your car. So you buy a car, you rent that car out, you pay it down, and then once the time comes for that car to either be sold or if it gets wrecked, you're able to recoup some of that money from the car that you've been paying down over the last few years. But whenever you lease, you're doing this exact same thing, but after the lease term is over, you have really nothing to show for the payments that you've been making. And of course, once you take into account wear and tear, damage, mileage, it can eat into your profit really quickly. I know that I am a bit biased because my cash economy model is basically the exact opposite from leasing, especially leasing high-end luxury vehicles. But I personally think that leasing is probably the most undesirable option whenever it comes to acquiring cars to start and grow a car sharing fleet. There just is too much risk and not enough upside, and because of that, I would simply avoid it. And I think anybody who's encouraging you to lease a car in order to get started with this business, that is a major red flag. And of course, we can't talk about red flags without talking about some of the consequences that can come with financing vehicles for Turo. And this is something that has become more and more common over the years, especially with financial institutions like Ally Bank. Over the years, banks have become more and more aware as to what Turo is, and more importantly, they've also become aware of what some Turo hosts will do in order to acquire more cars. Hosts that will take out as many loans as they can in a relatively short period of time. They'll take out loans under other people's names, they'll over-leverage themselves with debt, and they'll take out 10, 20, 30 loans in a 30 to 60 day period of time. I know it sounds far-fetched, but it actually does happen, and banks are definitely not comfortable with this. As a result, there are some banks that have decided that they want nothing to do with Turo, and they've actually outlined it in their terms and conditions that if you take out a loan with this specific bank, you cannot rent out that car on Turo, and if you do, then your car will get repossessed. Ally Bank is one of the most notorious examples of this, and as a result, if somebody gets a loan through Ally and then they rent their car out on Turo, their car can actually get repossessed, and it has happened many, many times. In many aspects of my life, I am definitely a proponent of asking for forgiveness, not permission. As long as you calculated all of the different types of risks you're taking, some healthy risk can be a good thing and it can actually pay off. Whenever it comes to Turo, the ask for forgiveness, not permission mindset simply does not work, and you need to make sure that you're reading all of the terms of service and you're also following them as well. You can finance cars for Turo in a smart and methodical way, but you have to make sure that you read the terms of service and you go with providers of loans that understand Turo and are okay with it. If an auto loan company says that they do not allow for the cars that they finance to be rented out on platforms like Turo, then you simply can't rent that car out on Turo. There is no way around it. It's simply the end of story. And I would be weary of anyone who's telling you anything other than this, because the reality is getting loans through companies like Ally Bank, it is an extremely risky venture to take part in and absolutely could result in your car being repossessed. And while I realize that there are many people that don't do this intentionally, they simply buy a car, they list that car on Turo, and they don't really think to even check with their loan provider, this is still a very preventable mistake, and it can lead to extremely severe consequences. And anyone who's telling you that you should over-leverage yourself with debt, you should finance a bunch of cars, you shouldn't worry about these companies like Ally Bank that do not allow for their cars to be on Turo, well, that is a big red flag in itself. At the end of the day, some of these major mistakes that people make with Turo can be very easily prevented by just using common sense and by looking online to see what other people are experiencing themselves. Things like bad fleet management companies, Ally Bank repossessing your cars, and leasing vehicles that simply don't make money. These are all common questions and common mistakes that people make, but unfortunately, they're also very preventable by simply doing your due diligence. In my opinion, avoiding these 3 red flags is a great way to make sure that you're setting yourself up for as much success as possible. But like always, you guys, I would love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.